Hi, this is Trey Pastor. Welcome to my review with spoilers of Stargirl season 3, episode 8. Season is called Frenemies. The theme is Frenemies. This is chapter 8. This is called Infinity Inc. Part 2. Okay, where we last left off from this episode, the Shade grabbed Courtney, and Pat came along reluctantly to help Jenny, the son of Alan Scott, the Green Lantern, help her find her brother. But this time, the Shade was having trouble with his powers because, as they showed in the previous episode, Jenny absorbed some of the dark matter or Shadowlands power into her ring, so it corrupted, the Shadowlands and corrupted her ring. So the Shade actually he wanted Courtney to help kind of purge Jenny to purge the darkness out of her ring, so that way the Shade would get his full powers back and they wouldn't be acting wacky. Okay, so but they discovered actually Courtney's brother, and we also discovered him. He was captured by Helix, and they were experimenting on him in some weird way, like bombarding him with all this light. And whenever Jenny tried to touch him, it basically causes powers to go haywire, and it caused Pat and the Shade to actually vanish to the Shadowlands. They wake up, and as this episode begins, they wake up in the Shadowlands. Okay, and of course, Shade is anxious to get out of there, and he thinks he knows the way, as we saw in the previous season, that through the movie theater, that he was able to walk through with his power into the real world. But when him and Pat is going to the movie theater, they discover that it's locked, and the Shade tries to use his powers on it, but he gets blasted back by a surge of green energy from because his powers are corrupted by Jenny's green energy light, so he gets blasted right back. And he tells Pat, he's trying to tell Pat how things are different in the Shadowlands, how things are different, how he's going to see things that plays on his fears. He's basically telling Pat that he has to watch out because all the stuff in here is going to be preying on his. Like, he has no hidden phobias. Only since Pat is a normal human being, he'll have his ancient phobias or whatever to prevent him from focusing on getting out. And they actually walk into to the diner, and and they think, what is this the thing about what is the weird thing, and then all of a sudden we hear the gambler's voice. Okay, and that's an allusion to the Shade, because the Shade never really forgave him before he passed on. So that's why the gambler was there to prey on him. And then they make their way out of there, and then the next thing you know, they're in the Pat's shop, the Shadowlands version of Pat's shop, where they hear somebody working on a car, and then we hear the voice, and then we look, and Pat looks, and then we see that it's his father. Okay, and of course his father is basically telling how he never amount to anything. He's always following people. He's never a leader and anything. But Pat is, and the Shade is telling him, don't listen to it, doesn't pay attention. He's just trying to play on your guilt and whatever. And Pat is saying, listen, I don't feel guilty about this. I made basically he's saying he's made his peace. Was trying to live up to his father's standards, trying to please his father. He said he's lived up to that, so he doesn't feel he doesn't have that. And then they make their way to through another door, and then we see them. They're in this old-fashioned house where you see these nurses attending to this woman who's crying out, and then we see, of course, it's the Shade's sister who's pleading with him to come, to be with her as she's dying, and she doesn't want to die alone like their father did. And the Shade, of course, is trying to he's trying to ignore it, but he's hearing the pleading and he's looking distressed. And Pat is telling him, listen, you keep telling us that we got to avoid this, but maybe you have to confront these things. Maybe that's the key to getting out of this. Okay, and then Pat kicks down the door, and the Shade is afraid to jump through, but he grabs the Shade and they jump through, and then they wind up in the Shadowlands version of Pat's house, where they see his father again, and we see his Shadowlands version of Barber as well, and they're basically telling Pat he's not going to amount to anything, and now we see the real issue that Pat is having in his mind, where as Pat's father breaks down that said, listen, his mom abandoned him, and he's basically saying that Mike is going to resent him too, just like you resented me. and but Pat, you see, Pat is not focused on it. Pat is not. He's not really bothered by the father, but we think if you watch this, you see that he is bothered by the fact that Mike, okay, may miss his mom, and so I think that's what his real issue is. Not his father. I think his father think he's over that just by the way he's acting. But the mom thing, mom abandoning them, that is what the issue that's really bothering him. And now we go back to the to Helix where we see Courtney. She's laying on a couch in a locked office, and she's looking around and she notices a camera there staring at her, and she basically says, "No, this is how you've been spying on us." And then we see the nurse comes in, and she basically tells her, "Listen, you caused quite a bit of damage this night. You need to take Jenny and get out of here and go home." And she said, "I'm not leaving." She's not leaving without her brother. And she says, "Listen, we're trying to help him, and you disrupted this a very important experiment that we're trying to help." They said, "And you just stay here." And then she basically leaves her, in the room locked up, and she's still yelling at the camera. When actually we see Mr. Bones actually walks in and explains how this institution is. He said, "This place is not a prison." He said, "This place is a place where people to hide, the people that are born different to hide in isolation from from the outside world. While we tend to them." And Courtney is saying, "Listen, that's not the way to do it. You have to, with love and family. That's the way to get these people together, not have them stay away." And the way to help Jenny's brother is for her to be with with her brother. That'll help him control his powers. Okay. And Mr. Bones thinks about it and goes, "Okay," because if you're not right, it's going to cause so much damage. And then you see the next thing you see is Courtney going to Jenny, who's in a room that's basically shielded from her light powers, and she can't use it to get out. She tries to use a ring, but it blocks her from getting out. But Courtney is able to get into the room and tell her, "Come on, you're going to help solve your, you're going to help, free your brother." And they go to a room and where his brother is, and he's telling him this, telling her to stay away. He said, "But no, we have to be together." And she approaches him again, and she holds on to him this time without letting go. And then you see the flashback of them as little kids being separated, and then you see them breaking free from the people holding them back, and they run together, and they're hugging each other. And then you see the adult versions of their characters holding each other, and then you see them wake up, back to the real world, and their powers are back under control. And we also see Pat and the Shade. They come back to the real world from the Shadowlands. Now that Jenny's power has been purged of the darkness. Okay, now everybody's healing together. Now you see as they're getting ready to leave, and Courtney is saying, "Listen, this place, you should not hold these people back." And she says, "Listen, this is." The nurse is saying, "This is not we're not holding people against their will. Okay, they're here voluntarily." And Jenny's brother Todd says, "Yes, they told me I could leave any time. I mean, I was here, voluntarily." Okay, and Courtney still doesn't think that's right, but they decide to leave. Everybody decides to leave together. And then you see Pat and Shade have a talk. They're having a talk, and Pat is telling, "Listen, Shade, listen, for your redemption, you can help Todd with control his powers, help him use his powers like nobody was there for you. You could be there for him, and help control his powers." And Pat kind of convinces him to do that. And so Jenny said, "There's I know I forgot the character she mentioned that somebody that's how led to her to coming back to to finding Todd." She said that person is having nightmares, and I promised I would come back and help. And so the Shade, Todd, and Jenny use the Shadowland powers to go to New York to help this other person. And then that's how it ends. And then Courtney and Pat is just there by themselves and saying, "How do we get home?" And the next thing they're on a bus. And Courtney is saying, "Listen, I'm glad we was able to help Jenny and her brother." And that's how I feel about the team, the JSA. You want to help people, like helping Cameron control his powers and stuff, and helping that's part of who I am, and that's what we should be. And I think going forward, that's how we should be. We should be open and honest, and that's my part, to help everybody. See, because she said, "Listen, I help people without the staff." Okay, so she feels, reinforced about what, her reaching out to Cameron and helping him and all that stuff. So she said that's how she's going to go forward. And you can see Pat is distracted while Courtney is saying all this. He's kind of staring out the window, and you see he's kind of distracted. And Courtney notices that and said, "Are you okay?" And he's saying, "No, I'm not. Still not over the Shadowlands thing." And that's how you know that he's not. For Pat, it's not his father, because you can tell he said he was over that. I think it's the part about Mike's mom, how she basically she abandoned him, and I think that's the issue that he's worried about, whether that that he did the right thing, where he rescued Mike because his mom abandoned him, and he went and got Mike and moved on, and I think he's worried about Mike's mother not being in his life, and I think you may see, I don't know if they're gonna explore that maybe later in this season or maybe next season with Pat, because I think they showed her last season. Excuse me, Mike's mom when the Starman was looking for Pat. They showed him at a diner talking to a waitress, and that was Mike's mom. So you may see her. She may make an appearance. I think that is the thing that's weighing on Pat's mind. That Mike may have some resentment about his mom abandoning him. So I think that's the issue that's going to weigh on Pat's mind. Okay, and then also we see at the very end, we see now, because Courtney thought that Helix was spying on them, and the nurse says, "Listen, we don't spy. We just did our research. That's how we knew about you. We don't put cameras. We don't spy on people." So now you actually see somebody down in the sewers in Blue Valley, still looking at the monitors, and you see a monitor with a frozen picture of our man Rick on it, and he punches he punches through the TV screen at it, and then it goes off that way. So now the person looks like it could be Dragon King. Okay, like maybe it is Dragon King. First I thought it was, then I thought it wasn't, and now I think it may be, because the person actually, he looks like Dragon King from the back, but who knows? But I'm hopeful that they'll resolve this issue going forward. We'll find out who exactly killed the gambler and why, and who has all the cameras up and why. So anyway, let me know what you think of this episode. I thought this was good. For some reason, I thought, oh yeah, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. Towards the end, once Pat and them are leaving, you see Mr. Bones looking out the window and talking to the nurse. He said, maybe our way is not the way. Maybe isolation is not the way. Maybe we should form a team. And I know other people were saying about this episode that maybe it seemed more like a backdoor pilot for either two things. Either the Helix Institute, the place where Mr. Bones at with the nurse, and because they did show in the beginning when they had a lockdown, a couple of different superpowered people, okay, briefly. So it could be, it did look like maybe a backdoor pilot for Helix, or a backdoor pilot for Jenny and her brother Todd and the Shade. So they could go either way. So I don't. We'll see at the end of the season whether, if they talk about it. Got to look for it and see if they are going to have maybe a show next season for Helix. It's kind of in flux because the CW actually has been sold to a different company. I made a video about that on my other channel. That's been sold to this syndication company, and they kind of skew older. So I don't know. Maybe on HBO Max or something they'll do a show. That now that they did a Green Lantern show, they're going to do the Green Lantern show focusing on John Stewart. Maybe they'll do another show too. So maybe they could do the Helix thing, or they can do the Jenny and her brother and the Shade. Okay, so, and like I said said Mr. Bones because Keith David does his voice, and his voice is just so distinctive, and just it gets to me. So, and the Helix Club would be sort of like an X-Men thing in a way. So I don't know if they do that, or do the Jenny and her brother, because their powers are interesting, light and dark, and then the Shade with them as well, and going on these wacky adventures. So they could do that either way. But I'll see what they do. Anyway, let me know what you think of this episode. Feel free to leave comments down below. I have links to my social media in the description box: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also have a link to my other channel, Reviews and Opinions. You check that out as well. Also have a link down below to my Patreon. Okay, link to my Patreon, which is only $5 a month. I have tons of unedited content on there. I got Marvel shows on there. I got DC shows on there. I got Stargirl, Superman and Lois, The Flash, Titans, Doom Patrol, and I'll be doing Titans when that begins November 3rd. I think they dropped 2 episodes, so I'll be reacting to that as well as reviewing that. Okay, and also, and I think Doom Patrol starts in December. Anyway, also I have Marvel shows. I have WandaVision, Loki, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, WandaVision. I think I said that right. Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Book of Boba Fett, She-Hulk. Okay, all 4 parts of Zack Snyder Justice League. Follow the link below to the page and check it out. Also, please give this video a thumbs up. Helps the channel. I truly appreciate it. Also, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when I upload new content to this channel. And this is Trey Pastor saying so long and take care.